Now, we looked at all these genealogies at a glance, and yet there's a lot that we can maybe consider in relationship to all the names. But what was important about the people mentioned, you think, in this genealogical record? I think, Todd, you alluded to some of it.
Well, when we were looking at it earlier, Mark, you and I are going through that Operation Timothy, and our last discussion last week had to do with
Operation Timothy. By the way, just give us a quick thing. What is that? What is? I mean, no one would know what that is.
Okay, so Operation Timothy is a discipleship program, Christian businessmen's ministry product, I'll call it, and we started a couple of months ago. So Mark is mentoring me through on a month-by-month basis, and really covers a wide range of topics relative to our faith. And so, we do a little individual study, and then we get a chance to come together and share each other's thoughts on reflections on what we learned during the past month. And last month, or the last time we met, was about is the Bible legitimate? I mean, is this thing real? And that was the sort of the context that we were working from. And the Bible is one of the most researched, in fact, maybe the most researched, the most challenged, piece of writing probably in history, because people have worked hard to try to break it apart and render it unbelievable, so to speak, or not factual. And I think when you look at these genealogies, it simply strengthens an argument about the Bible, because you draw it directly back to specific people, right? I think the other thing about this, and maybe this goes into that second question, they were talking in that narrative, you go from Adam, and we can trace it all the way through to Jesus, and so the people who were there when this was written, they've heard about the Messiah, they've heard about David, and I think it's interesting that the closer and closer the time comes for Jesus to be born, and all these things are happening, the lineage just continues. I have to wonder what it was like for the people in that time, because they could go back and read all about these families, and when they said that it was going to be out of the line of David, and they keep drawing things closer and closer to Jesus, it had to be a fascinating time for them.
One of the things that I like too about the genealogy, that particularly as we come back at it from Matthew and see the specific line that Jesus has, so they're capturing it all in this section without knowledge of which way that line is going to go, and you go all the way back to Genesis, and you start saying, okay, wait a second, so it's Abraham, and you follow it through, and then there's some real surprising twists and turns in the line of Christ that I think really begins with the Joseph narrative, which is the 13th narrative of the book of Genesis, and all of a sudden you see what I would imagine if I'm God and I'm orchestrating history, and I've got a sense of Messiah coming. Messiah comes through the line of Joseph in my imagination of how this ought to look, because Joseph is such a prototype of doing it right. I mean, and being a victim, and yet overcoming, and even he's thrown in a pit by his brother, his older brother. He's sold into slavery. He avoids temptation. He honors the king, and then he's elevated, and you have all these great stuff. But juxtapositioned against his awesomeness is the one who throws him in the pit, or causes that to happen, Judah, who winds up sleeping with his half sister, having an affair, and who does all this despicable things. And yet it's Judah that we see the redemptive line of Christ coming through the brokenness of Judah. And in fact, I think that's where we start recognizing that what we've used as a term at the Journey North on the leadership team a lot is that we want to be a church that goes after the hurting and the broken and the wounded, and the Monzers of the world. And the Greek term for Monzer is really a person who's born out of sexual brokenness, but I think we've expanded its meaning. But you have people like Timothy, who is a Monzer, who Paul clearly goes after as a disciple, and so you've got these Monzers that it's like, well, wait a second, why would you choose that? Well, Jesus comes from that line. I mean, he comes from the line of these broken, sexually broken, mischievous people, and it's like, wait a second, couldn't he have come from the better line, the line that did it right, the line that followed all the rules? Couldn't he have come from the people like Elizabeth and Jenny and it's like all the, but no, he comes from these mischievous, deceptive, sometimes purely evil, criminally evil. So, and it's like just this amazing thing that I think God is from the very beginning demonstrating that his purpose is redemptive nature of healing and hope for hurting, broken people. And I just, I marvel at not just the fact that we have the genealogy, but the line with which Christ comes to us from. So this long list of names in the Bible, I think, tells us about the kind of relationship that God wants with his people. And in that he wants it to be intimate, he wants it to be relational, but he's here as a redemptive force in the midst of this incredible things for hurting, broken people.